Have you guys ever scrolled through YouTube or Instagram and think, how is everyone else so put together? And I'm just here existing. Well, guess what? Not having your life together isn't just okay. It might actually be the best place to start. So, let me just be real with you. A few years ago, I was just, a lost 21, 22-year-old working these dead-end jobs and really unsure and unclear what I would necessarily do in life and what exactly my purpose was. So, I would just going through life. But I would watch these other creators with, seems to be these perfect lives. I was big into computers back then, so I still am. I would see them post about, having these perfect setups and their six-figure incomes, and who doesn't dream of that? Who doesn't want to drive that Porsche 911 or, these fancy cars? I wanted a Supra, Toyota Supra and things like that. And you see them with these brand deals, getting free stuff. I just felt like I was losing. Then one day, I heard a creator say that, a huge creator, admit in an interview that behind the scenes, they were really struggling. Things were spiraling out of control. And that they hadn't paid themselves in months. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't failing, I just wasn't pretending. Social media, it's all a myth. It's the myth of the together life. Especially for these creators that talk about, just having it all together all the time. I could think of a few off the top of my head, but this isn't about that. Social media, it's just a curation. It's not a reflection. No one is gonna share their failures unless it fits a redemption arc. You don't see the people who started YouTube and never made it. You never see those videos. They've been at under 100 subscribers for years, maybe even a decade. You never see those professional e-gamers that didn't make it to the top. What about the people that started those weight transformations but never lost the weight? Highlight reels does not equal reality. Most influencers are performing stability. Everyone is dealing with something, whether that be finances, their family, identity, or even just burnout. Not knowing your path isn't a problem, it's the human condition. There's the myth on social media, the myth of the together life. Thinking that they want you to have the perception of them that they have it all, they got it all figured out, they're perfect. And it's because social media is a curated gallery, not a diary. You may see a 20-second reel of somebody journaling, drinking matcha, meditating at sunrise. And what you don't see is them doom scrolling for 45 minutes of the night before, fighting with their partner, or waking up late and refilming that morning routine 3 times. Now, it's always been funny to me. You see those videos where it's like, they get up and they go record themselves getting out of bed or leaving the house. And it's like, well, you gotta go back to get your camera. You had to set up the camera in the first place. So this isn't your first time waking up. Or they wake up face fully done, all of a sudden their hair is perfect at getting out of bed. It's hilarious. But everyone filters out the chaos. Not because they're liars, but because the algorithm rewards aesthetic things, not necessarily authenticity. It's not real life, it's content. It's staged, edited, and reshot. Going through this with, YouTube and things like that, it rewards that perfection. And, there might be a slight shift going on, but as long as I've been on YouTube, that seems to be what gets the most engagement. But highlight reels does not necessarily reflect the reality. You're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's best scenes. Even the happiest, most put together creators have full-blown breakdowns. But guess what? They don't vlog those. You don't see those. And when they do show a low point, it's often after they already fixed it. Like, oh, I used to be broke, but look at me now. That's not vulnerability. That's marketing. Everyone's struggling. They just have better lighting. It's wild how many people in their life, or in your life, coworkers, influencers, even family, are silently dealing with something massive. Anxiety, burnout, divorce, debt, loneliness. But once people do open up, we realize, oh, we were all just winging it. Together is subjective, fleeting, and often fake. Even if someone has the job, the relationship, the apartment, they might still feel completely lost on the inside. Success on paper doesn't necessarily equal peace. Most people chase, the together life, not because it feels good, but they think that they're supposed to. And spoiler, those same people often burn out and reset their lives at 30, 40, 50. Because the checklist didn't necessarily make them happy. The thing is, you're not supposed to have it all figured out. There's this false expectation by, 25 or 30 that you should have your career, relationship, income, fitness, and hobbies, even social life. Hey, you could even include a skincare routine in there, fully optimized. Like, come on. Who made that rule? Was it Netflix? Was it Pinterest? Like, who's doing this? But you're a human. You're not a productivity machine. Your 20s and 30s aren't for perfection. They're for experimentation. Confusion isn't failure. It's data. It's your brain collecting intel on what doesn't necessarily fit. There's a term in psychology called productive ambiguity. It's the space where nothing feels settled, but you're still in motion. It's uncomfortable, but it's the birthplace of clarity. Think of it like a foggy road. You can't see the end, but you're still driving. And that movement, that's growth. So, if you've been feeling like a mess lately, maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just human. And maybe that's exactly where you're supposed to be. We've been taught that unless everything is clean, structured, and Instagram ready, we're failing. But life isn't a spreadsheet. It's a rough draft. Being in progress means you're moving, even if it's slow, uncertain, or messy. Chaos isn't the enemy. Stagnation is. Feeling unsure is often the best sign that you're questioning, growing, and shifting. Now, we're gonna be a bit controversial here. I know not everybody's too fond of these celebrities, but I'm gonna get into it. Most success stories, start as, oh, I had no idea what I was doing. But if you take a look at Oprah, for example, she was fired from her news anchor job because, she was unfit for, TV. Or take a look at J.K. Rowling. She was a single mom on welfare, writing Harry Potter in cafes. And here goes the big controversial one right here. Elon Musk lived in his office, but because he couldn't afford rent while building Zip2. Those weren't glamorous starts. They were uncertain, embarrassing, and raw. But if they had their lives perfectly together from the beginning, they wouldn't be the same people that they are now. You're not stuck. You're just building without the picture on a box. You ever try building an IKEA furniture without like any instructions or anything like that? Well, that's what life feels like in your 20s. You've got all these parts, all this potential, zero clarity on, what it's supposed to look like. But that's not failure, that's freedom. Because you get to decide what the final product becomes. No one handed Steve Jobs a blueprint. He built it while failing forward. The lost phase is data collection. Every odd job, every awkward date, every failed project, it all teaches you something. Even if it's just not what to do again. There's a Japanese concept called wabi-sabi. The beautiful things are incomplete, imperfect, and impermanent. Your mess might just be the blueprint to something beautiful. Okay. So, when I graduated college, I landed a job as a sysadmin. The pay was alright, it's solid pay, decent hours. But honestly, I wasn't sure if this was it. Some days I'd feel productive. Other days I'd spiral into wondering if I was just pushing tickets and restarting routers forever. But then during some, late night patching downtime, I learned about scripting and automation, and really automating the servers and things like that, and tasks that I had to do. Not because I had to, but because I was curious. Some things that this may include for my, fellow geeks out there: some Bash, some PowerShell, a little bit of Python. And I realized I actually enjoyed solving these type of problems. I enjoyed automating my work. I enjoyed saving my time. And now I'm building out scripts that make the entire team's work easier. And I'm starting to think that, maybe this lost phase is I'm actually finding my edge. I didn't find clarity because I had a master plan. I found it because I leaned into the uncertainty and followed what made me curious. In psychology, there's this beautiful concept called liminal space. It's the in-between when the old you is gone and the new you hasn't fully arrived. It's uncomfortable, unclear, but it's also where your most powerful transformation takes place. Don't rush through it, live in it. So maybe not having it all figured out isn't a sign that you're behind. Maybe it's proof that you're on the edge of discovering something deeper. Something real, something yours. You don't need to blow up, you need to build up. We live in a time where if you haven't started a business, gone viral, or made 6 figures by 25, you feel like you're behind. But I'm gonna be honest here, that mindset's trash. Virality is a lottery. Stability is a strategy. You're not building hype, you're building infrastructure. And just like a sysadmin does, quietly, reliably, behind the scenes, think about it. In tech, what's more valuable? Flashy apps that crash, or rock solid systems that just work? This is one of those things where consistency just beats charisma. Everyone wants the dopamine hit of big wins, but most of the people with actual freedom, whether that be financial, emotional, creative, they've all built it brick by brick. Now, that daily 9 to 5, it's not giving up on your dreams per se. It's funding your growth. So that script you may have wrote on your lunch break, the server you may have automated, the shirt you earned on a Sunday, that's compounding progress that no one sees, but it all adds up. This doesn't just apply. I'm just giving examples of things that apply to me. I'm a sysadmin, so this can apply to anyone's career. This isn't just technology focused or IT focused. This could apply to anyone. Now, mental health, hobbies, and peace. These are the actual milestones. Sometimes we celebrate job promotions and relationship announcements, but we never talk about the win of having a weekend to yourself, or saying no to something toxic, or finally learning to sleep 8 hours, as simple as that may sound. If you're spending your 20s figuring out how to, regulate your stress or find your rhythm and enjoy small wins, you're crushing it. No dashboard is going to show that, but that's real growth. This doesn't just apply to your 20s. You can be in your 30s, 40s, hey, even in your teens. This applies to everyone. You need to take time to yourself and learn how to just enjoy the small things in life. Okay? It's okay to just be surviving. Some weeks you may be writing code, making gains, eating clean. Other weeks, you're probably, taking one of those. We got Publixes where I'm at, so you may be taking one of them frozen Publix pizzas or DiGiorno pizzas and nuking it in the in the oven at 10 p.m. and fixing a printer remotely. But that's not failure. That's life. The myth that we should be constantly optimizing everything is what really burns people out. A few months into my job, personally, I remember staying up until 2 a.m. on a work night, not because I was grinding from some hustle, but because I was doom scrolling tech Twitter, feeling like I was already behind. Everybody's out here, 22 years old with a 100K salary, 22 years old or 21 years old with a 180K salary. Like, they just make it seem like their lives are just perfect. But like every other 24-year-old was, it seemed like they were starting up a startup app or going to Bali or something like that. But I was just patching servers or doing what I had to do on my own, occasionally treating myself to a decent coffee. But over time, I realized that normal isn't failure. My rent was paid, I'm learning new skills, and I wasn't burnt out. That's not losing. That's winning quietly. There's power in quiet consistency. The people who build slow, who show up every day, learn, rest, and repeat, day in and day out, they're the ones that are still winning 10 years from now. The flashy stuff burns fast, but the slow stuff sticks. So if you're in your 20s, this can apply to your 30s as well. Any age, really. Just living a regular, non-viral life, that's good. You're not too late. You're not boring. You're becoming someone solid. And that's what matters, more than anyone being impressive. Not an identity. We treat figuring things out like it's a 30-day sprint, but it's not. It's a process. And sometimes that process lasts years. You're not lost, you're learning. The pressure to have it all together by 25 is all a made-up milestone. Most people don't hit that real stride until their 30s, 40s, and even 50s. The people who look like they figured it all out early, they're often the ones that crack later. Because, they're built on a shaky foundation. Embrace the messy middle. You know that feeling where you're not where you want to be, or you don't feel like who you were, but you're also not where you want to be? That's the messy middle. And it's so important. It's uncomfortable, but it's where you build habits, identity, and resilience. Think of it like debugging code. It's slow, it's frustrating, but it's the only way the system becomes stable. No one skips this phase. They just hide it better. Success is a moving target, and it's personal. We act like there's one version of success: financial freedom, beach, laptop, 6 figures, and a 6-pack of abs. But what if success is something quieter? Like simply peace of mind. or getting 7 hours of sleep consistently. Your success might be learning to communicate better, building a strong friendships, figuring out your passions while working on your normal job. You know, and you know what? That's valid. More than valid. That's healthy. Think about climbing a mountain. The base is crowded. Everyone starts there. The peak is glamorous. That's what people post about. But the middle, that's where you sweat. That's where you slip. And that's where you think about quitting. But that's also where you grow. That's where you build the strength that gets you up to the top. Not because you skipped steps, but because you showed up when no one else was watching. You know, I'm gonna hit you with another nugget. There's a concept in Stoic philosophy, amor fati. I know I'm butchering that. It's alright. Don't get on me too much. The love of fate. It means embracing every part of your path, even if setbacks and uncertainty. Because even the detours shape you. Even waiting does something. Even boredom builds something. So if your life feels ordinary right now, if you're not making big moves or posting big wins, you're not failing. You're laying the foundation. Now, that might not look exciting, but that's real. And real always beats perfect.